The lights are on, and we are here at Market Matters. I am so excited to welcome all of you this morning. I really thought about it as I was getting ready. This has been a fabulous January. If you know me, you know I try to squeeze every minute out of an hour and every hour out of a day. And it has been a fabulous January. If you know our entire company, we have a great group of top leaders called the ALC, and we just returned from our ALC retreat, which was hosted at Lake Oconee at the Ritz-Carlton. And we had time with one another to mastermind, to grow together as a stronger group, and then to think about coming back and bringing our entire group together to look at the past quarter of what's happened and where we're going into 25. It's exciting, and we have a lineup that you will love. We're going to open up with our national stats. We're then going to lead into our local statistics, and then we have some very special speakers that will feature our commercial, new homes, and luxury, what's happening on that scene. So I think for everyone, you can get a great overview of what's happening in our Metro Atlanta area, and then you can hone in on the pieces that we're going to present today that really make a difference in how you conduct your business going forward. So I'd like to start the show, and I'd like to welcome up Michael Cheevers, our general manager, and Austin Scott, the new team leader of the KW Cityside Market Center. Welcome aboard.
Austin Scott, what's up?
Michael Cheever, how you doing?
I am doing great. I'm happy to be up here with you today.
Yes, it's an absolute honor. Thank you everyone for coming out today and being a part of Market Matters. We hope that you guys are going to be able to take away some great information this morning.
100%. As we start, we'd like to take a moment and give special thanks to our sponsors. So Supreme Lending, McMichael and Gray, Campbell and Brannon, a new sponsor, Atlanta Peach Movers, and Hello Leverage. We greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. There are people on here that have been with our company for 20 years. And so for the new ones and those who've been here for 20 years, you are part of the team that helps us deliver an elite experience to every single client that we serve, and we appreciate you. Thank you. All right, Austin, national stats. What is going on? We've got, starting off, GDP, the gross domestic product. This is the sum of all total finished products, goods, and services that are bought and sold in an economy over the course of a year. All right, so as you look at the GDP, goal is between 2 and 3%. Less than 2, it's not growing fast enough. So when we talk about 2 to 3, that is annual growth, all right? So over 3%, feel like things are overheating. You might see an overheating moment here in 2021. Then 2.9% in 2024 concluded the year. So in range, a little bit on the high end, right? But in range. And what that means is the Fed is looking at this and saying, hey, the economy is growing at the top end of the healthy range, which, again, inside the range and healthy. So good things, right? Unemployment and job openings. So your unemployment number here is in blue. So unemployment 4.1%, that is relatively low, all right? High unemployment could be 7, 8, 9. You can see here years 2010, unemployment was almost 10%. We remember how much fun 2010 was, right? Here, 4.1%, so a very healthy unemployment number. When the Fed looks at gross domestic product, and they look at unemployment, those are the two main measures that they say, how is the economy performing? So when those numbers are strong, they're gonna be bullish on the policies that they have, meaning the things that we're currently doing, we feel like are stimulating the economy appropriately, and we're gonna keep doing those things, right? When you see unemployment start to rise, When you see GDP start to drop, that's when they're looking to stimulate things, all right? So job openings rate, this is just the rate at which jobs are opening up in the economy. So that number, 4.9%. Again, when you see those numbers in the fours, those are pretty healthy. It means, hey, there are jobs that are opening and the unemployment is relatively low. Oh, the I word. Okay, inflation, right? Simply think about inflation like this. Inflation is the balancing of the money supply to the cost of products, goods, and services, right? So when money is put into the money supply, what's gonna happen to the cost of products, goods, and services? It's gonna go up, right? When there's less money in the money supply, then you're gonna rebalance lower. Why this is a big deal? You see here what happened to inflation. It totally spiked in 2021 and 2022. That was as a result of a lot of the stimulus measures that were put in place for COVID and some other reasons. So a ton of money was pumped into the economy and the economy started to overheat, right? So then what did the Fed come in and do? They raise the interest rates and they start pulling money out of the money supply. So what you see is you see that inflation dropped. Now, Target, they say Target's 2%. They want 2% inflation, right? And that, as they look at inflation, there's always going to be inflation I say always, we will almost always have inflation because things will just naturally get more expensive. Deflationary environment is kind of scary, so we haven't been in that in a long time. And so with inflation, if inflation is in the 2%, maybe a little bit above, the Fed, again, views this as healthy, and they say the monetary policies that we have in place, we're going to kind of continue. So we'll talk about what that means for interest rates as we move forward. Just know that you've got CPI and core CPI. Don't be confused by this. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, right? There's also a PPI, which is a Producer Price Index. When you see those things, that's just the cost for CPI of what the consumer is paying for a basket of goods. This basket of goods is a standard basket of goods, things like milk, eggs, that kind of thing, relative to food. But then they also will pull food and energy, right? And you have what's called core CPI. So the reason they do that is because typically food and energy is more, what's the word I'm looking for? Fluctuates at a higher level. Thank you, sir, right? So when they pull food and energy, they're gonna get a more balanced long-term picture of what the cost indexes are doing for consumers and producers. All right, mortgage rates. What do we see on mortgage rates? So we see here on mortgage rates that we've got a 7.72% is the long-term moving average, all right? So what does that mean? That means over a 40-year period of time, 7.72 is your average interest rate. Now, our average interest rate over the past year was 6.72. How did that feel to everybody? It felt high, right? Okay, I had somebody explain interest rates to me in an interesting way. They said, what the interest rate isn't actually as big a deal as how fast we got there, right? Well, the reason is because people will price the cost of obtaining a loan into their budget, and when it fluctuates rapidly, that can feel like, oh, how did everybody feel in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 when rates were just bottomed out? Everybody's like, woohoo, spend, everything's great. But then when they raised rates a lot very quickly, how did everybody feel, right? So when my mom got into real estate in 1987, 86, and interest rates were like 14%, right? So she sold 20-something houses in her first year, right? So it's not that people will or won't buy or sell. It's relative to the interest rates. It's how quick did we get there? And what happened is everybody went pretty quickly from 3 to about 6, 6.5, pretty quick. So that felt hard. Make sense?
That makes sense. And then just drawing everyone's attention to the chart for reference. If mom started in what, 87, you said? So if we look at the chart here at 87, we saw that there had been actually a decrease down to that. What was that, 14% that you said one was selling?
13, 14, something like that.
So there was actually just a decline there. And so just to give you a feel for what the market looked like at that time, that was a low rate and people were excited. That was like the 2 and 3% that we were seeing a little while ago for them then. People were probably really excited to get out of there, and so it's not surprising that she would have sold 20 homes during her first year in real estate.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So we say, oh, wow, 12, 13, 14% interest rate, you're selling a bunch of houses,
Yeah.
but it's because how people felt, because interest rates have been at 16 or 17%.
Yeah.
So they felt good about that rate. Right?
Absolutely.
And people are starting to feel better, okay? They're starting to feel better now about a 6.5%, 7%, interest rate than they did a year ago, right? I think we could all agree that we're seeing that. Monthly on interest rates, the way that interest rates fluctuated over the course of 2024, it wasn't a lot. And what we found, does everybody remember at the beginning of 24 when rates went from November and December 7.62 and they dropped down into the mid sixes? Remember that, right? Again, people feel good about that rate when it was higher before and it drops. So interest rates, yes, and Austin's going to talk about affordability. It is the number one factor in affordability relative to homes. And how people feel about those is where are we coming from and how quickly did we get there? All right, Austin.
All right.
Nostradamus.
So everybody wants to know what's going to happen to interest rates. So I'll tell you. So number one, we saw some rate cuts in November and December. The Fed is expected to leave those rates between 4.25 and 4.5%. Those were the drops November, December. Now, fun fact, the Fed is actually meeting today, but we are not expected to see any drop in the Fed rate today after that meeting, all right? But the Fed has lowered over the entire year of 2024, the Fed's lowered their rate by a full 1% from the 2024 peak. So that is good news. There is a 65% chance for 2 rate cuts in 2025. Now, I know that depending on the economist, there's some different predictions around that. But what we're seeing is that it's about a 65% chance that there will be 2 rate cuts that we'll see this year. Now, when it comes to the Fed rate, of course, that's different than the mortgage rates that our clients are interested in. And so we really didn't feel the impact of those couple of cuts that we saw last year, or that full percent move that we saw last year. We really didn't see the impact of that. We actually saw much higher rates, closer to 7s. And so home loan interest rates are expected to trend back towards the Fed rate in 2025, which is the direction that we want them to be headed in. We didn't see that trending. We saw a little bit of trending away in 2024, and we expect to start seeing the mortgage interest rates to trend back towards those lower Fed rates that we saw. And that means good news for our clients this year. Now, how much? We don't know, but we do expect a trend back towards the Fed rate.
That's awesome. How many people have had a client call and say, hey, the Fed lowered rates, I'm going to get a better interest rate. I called the lender and they didn't have a better rate for me.
Or they had a higher rate.
Or they had a higher rate. Have anybody had that happen, right? And so, Austin, thank you for bringing this up. So the federal funds rate is the interbank lending rate. So that's the rate at which banks borrow from the Fed or banks loan bank to bank, all right? So we'll just call that friends and family rate. Then you've got the consumer rate, and that's the rate at which the banks are loaning out to the consumer. And that's the interest rate. And just know that moves off of the 10-year bond. So what'll happen is the Fed will do what they do in rates, but then the markets look at what the Fed does and they go, okay, is this bullish for the economy or is this hawkish for the economy? Hawkish being bad, bullish being good, right? So when they do that, they start making bets. Literally, this is what happens. They start making bets, right? And that is what moves the yield on the Treasury, and that's what moves the interest rate. So when you see, it's almost as much, it'll be interesting to see, not as much what Powell does today with the interest rate decision, but what he says, because that's what they're going to start betting off of, right? And then we'll see how that moves on the interest rates. I actually read an interesting piece this morning. It was saying, so Trump has verbally, as he does, verbally gotten very outspoken and challenged the Fed chair to drop rates, okay? Well, the op-ed that I read this morning, which was interesting, said they think he might have done it as a chess move to have Powell come out and be very bullish in his comments, and then the traders will go, whoa, if Powell's been really bullish in his comments, then maybe we want to trade against that, right, to hedge, and we could actually see interest rates go down, even though the Fed doesn't move the rate. Who knows? We'll see. All of that being what it is, just know that with your clients, when they're like, oh, we saw the Fed lowered rates, temper their expectations and make sure they talk to a lender if they're thinking they're going to get a better rate, and just let them know that those two different.
That's good stuff, Michael.
All right, affordability.
Affordability. This is what it's really all about, and these are the conversations that we need to be having with our clients, is around affordability. Having conversations around the rate and focusing on the rate isn't as important as what the client can afford. And so in talking about the affordability index, what is that? I looked up the definition, and the affordability index measures whether or not a typical family can qualify for a mortgage earning a median family income in the U.S. To interpret the indices, a value of 100 means that a typical family has exactly enough income to qualify for a median priced home. So let's take a look. I'm going to jump straight to 2024 because I think that's going to be probably the most relevant to what we need to see and talk about today. So the index is at 98.97. Median price existing single family homes are at $410,208 on average, and then we're seeing an average mortgage rate of 6.72%. Average monthly principal and interest payments are at $2,121, and then finally the median family income is at nationally at $101,853. Now, I want to draw your attention. Now, remember that a value of 100 means that a typical family has exactly enough income to be able to qualify for a median price home. And here we see ourselves just slightly under where most, well, I'm not going to say most, but maybe we should say the average family is able to afford at today's rates with the income at the median family income. And so I think that just with this really helps us to understand how a slight rate reduction could mean the difference between qualifying for a home or not. A slight increase in family income can mean the difference or not. So I think really, this is a time where we're really coaching and we're talking to our clients about down payment, which could make an impact here with that small 1% margin that we're just under. DTI and credit, of course, are important because remember, this is the 6.72 average rate for the year. And so affordability is the conversation that we need to be having. This is a little local, so I know our next presenters, Ande and Cara, are going to get me for this, but I just couldn't help myself. I ran across a little stat for the Atlanta metro area that says that close to 50% of our population is above the U.S. median income. So I think that's a good thing for us here in this area to know that that you've got a 50% chance of finding someone that lands above this median family income, therefore increasing their chances, according to the model, to be able to qualify for a home at a median price level. So I think that's a really good thing for us. Hopefully I didn't get in too much trouble from the local segment folks. So let's move on to the next slide. Home sales. All right, so this chart is basically walking us through the number of home sales that we've seen in the U.S. Each year. And as you can see, this in 2024, we're showing 3.83 million home sales, and these are single family homes that are represented here in 2024. Now that is up from 3.65 million in 2023. So the great thing is even though you see it kind of peak here in 2021 at 5.41 million homes, sold a lot of homes. And then you saw that trend downward over the next couple of years. The great thing is that we're starting to see that trend upwards from 2023 on. And I think a lot of you may have seen an uptick in calls, an uptick in mortgage applications for those of you on the loan side just this month alone. So we're really, really hopeful that we are going to continue to see that trend upward into 2025. All right, and all of those, all of that new interest that a lot of you guys may be seeing will equate to single-family home sales over the course of 2025 to beat out what we saw in 2024. Home prices. Home prices. Everyone knows that we're seeing an upswing in home prices from 2020 to 2024. We've seen here an increase from 300,000 as the average home price in America up to 410,000 now. So I think this brings us back to that affordability index that we saw a little in the previous slide. Affordability is key. Even though we've seen an increase in homes and home prices, affordability still is the conversation that we need to be having with our clients. And if you move on to the next slide, I think it's going to go into months of supply. All right, so looking here at the months of supply, you can see here that, of course, in 2021, that we were down to 2.2 months of supply, and I think we all felt it around that time. It's really tough around that time. But again, we're starting to see a positive upswing, and we're starting to see those numbers trend upward from that 2.2 that we saw in 2021 to 2.8 in 2022, and then we've leveled out between 23 and 24 at 3.1 months. And again, that's national, so it's going to look a little bit different locally depending on where you are. But the national average is holding steady around 3.1. So we're hoping to see some increase there. And this over these last 4 years, this is the lowest that we've seen inventory probably over the last 40 years here. So very, very historically low supply of homes that we're seeing there. But again, we're hoping to see that upswing into 2025. Appreciation. Annual appreciation. We are seeing annual appreciation in 2024 at 4%. But I want to take you guys back to 23, where there's nothing here. So in 23, we saw for the first time that that home values neither increased or decreased in 2023. So we didn't see any movement at all there. But then we saw a 38% increase in home values the previous 3 years prior to that. So we saw historic increases for those previous 3 years, and then there was sort of a bottoming out here in 2023. Mike, we were talking earlier about what may have caused that. Can you talk to the folks really quickly about quantitative policy?
So the Fed has two tools. The Fed has the interest rates, well, the federal funds rate, which is the interbank lending rate, which then affects interest rates. And then they have quantitative policy. So quantitative tightening is when they are pulling money out of the money supply. Literally, y'all, they have all these federal banks, they have local and regional federal banks, right? And they take cash out and they just either shred it or they store it. And so that's quantitative tightening. So they don't talk about quantitative tightening. They don't mention, hey, we're pulling money out of the money supply, right? And then quantitative easing is when they are putting money into the money supply. So if it felt in 2020, 2021, 2022, like there was a tailwind, good, there was, right? So they dropped rates. Federal funds rate was zero, between 0 and 0.25. And they put 80% of the supply of the amount of money that was in the total supply in about 3 years. They put in 80% of the money that was in the total supply in 3 years. So there was a ton of cash and it was very cheap to borrow. And then Allison, I don't know about you, but if anybody else felt like they were sitting in the seat without a seatbelt and they needed an airbag when 2023 hit, is because that's literally what they did. They pumped the brakes.
And talk about sitting in a seat with no airbag. I looked at this as like them pumping the brakes here. As long as we're using car analogies, let's run with it. But it was a pumping of the brakes, right?
Yeah.
During this time that we really saw. But on a positive note, I think the thing that I want to bring everyone back to is then even after that pumping of the brakes, we saw in 2024, we started to see that appreciation again at 4%. And so hopefully we begin to see an uptrend there. I don't know about whether we will see it at the rate that we did those previous 3 years before that brake pumping, but we expect for values to continue to rise.
Amen. All right, coming concerns. How many people have heard about clear cooperation? Yep, all right, we'll hit this quick. So this is something that you're gonna be reading about, and you're gonna be hearing about it, and don't you be surprised when it happens. So clear cooperation is a policy that was implemented by the National Association of Realtors about 5 years ago that says that properties have to be listed in the listing service within 24 hours of them being marketed to the public. Okay, all right, so pros and cons on this, right? I'm not saying one's good or bad. Large brokerages that have a lot of listings could benefit by having their own listing network because they have more listings, right? Smaller brokerages, more independent brokerages and realtors would have more difficulty if you started having what we'll call closed listing services, all right? Now, I believe that would be hampering to the market. I mean, as an agent, I wouldn't be able to see all the properties that are for sale or available. I wouldn't be able to see historical data on those sales. I think it'd be tougher for appraisers to get monetary values on the market. The other side of this is that if I own a property, I should be able to say how it is or isn't marketed, right? So you're getting these arguments from more, I'm just gonna say, more elite type of, mindsets that if it's mine, I get to do what I want with it, and if I don't want anybody to see it other than these 5 people, that's okay. Well, they can still do that, okay, all right? They can privately market their property, they can do all of those things. You can have non-exclusive listing agreements, there's all different kind of things that can happen in this, but from a macro standpoint, just know clear cooperation is all the properties that are listed are available for everybody to see, everybody to have an opportunity to bid on, and everybody to get that on. Yeah? So it seems more like a hug to me.
It does. I feel warm already.
Overpriced inventory, Austin. You want to talk quickly about that?
Overpriced inventory. I got to remember the mic. Overpriced inventory has definitely been an issue, and I think we can all attest to that with the high number of price improvements that we've seen probably over the last 12-month period. Even here locally, again, this is going to be talked about in the local segment in more detail. But overpriced inventory is definitely something that we need to continue to look out for. I think when the market speaks and we're seeing those longer days on market, and sometimes and oftentimes that price improvement tells the real story. And so again, you're going to hear a little bit more about that in that local segment. And how that impacts us.
All right, cooperative compensation. Y'all, cooperative compensation is going to come under fire. Projections are that this will be the topic of the next set of lawsuits. So just be aware of this. Now, cooperative compensation is when you sit down with a seller as the listing broker and you say, my broker is going to get paid 7, 6, 5 points. Percentage commission, I'll just say it. A commission of 5, 6, or 7 total. Now we will cooperatively share a percentage of that with a buyer's broker. All right. Well, here's the thing. The feedback on this that seems to be coming from the Department of Justice, which is a big deal, is they don't like this because they say that that makes a seller feel that they have to or feel obligated to pay an inflated amount of commission to someone other than their broker. And what happens is it's an incentive for that listing broker to work with an unrepresented buyer or a buyer that they're representing as a customer, which, think what you want about that. But the fact is that this is coming under fire. Just be prepared for this conversation. When you hear about it, don't be scared of it, right? Y'all, 2 years ago, last year, there was a lot going on about our commissions coming under fire, these commission lawsuits, and I had people ask me, what are you gonna do now that you can't get paid commission? Like, what are you talking about, right? But this is the news, and this is the media, and this is what's going on, right? So on this cooperative compensation, just be prepared to have a conversation with your client about your compensation.
All right. Well, listen, that brings us to a close here. We're now going to bring up our local segment presenters at this time.
On DMA?
I full action up here. Something new. Thank you, Pete. Say like letter I know you're familiar. Hi, Ivy.
Oh, how are you?
I'm great. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. How are we doing, Rawls Group and Friends?
Yes. It's a good day.
I don't know about you, but I was taking like copious notes, and then I was like, okay, bullish, hawkish, got it, now I understand. Let's keep going. So thank you so much to Austin and Michael for bringing us that phenomenal information. And before we get started, we would be remiss if we didn't give a very, very special happy birthday wish to the lovely Amanda Churchwell with Hello Leverage and in the Peachtree Road Market Center. Happy birthday. Amanda, we appreciate you being here with us on your birthday. We know this is the best way to celebrate, right?
With us.
This is it. So happy birthday, and for any other birthdays in the room, should we jump in?
Yeah, because that takes us right to this is the best group in the room. And one of my favorite things about being a leader in the Rawls Group is I get to be with all the leaders. You guys are the winners, the leaders in this industry. If you're guests in the room, welcome. We are happy that you are here. But once again, KW #1 in unit sales with more market share than the next 4 companies combined. That's huge.
Yeah, let's give it up for that. That's amazing.
And we love this one because listed and sold by the same company, still dominating by 24%. Congratulations.
And again, that just goes to show that who you're in business with matters. And here's the thing, that's all of you, that's all of our partners, our affiliates, our sponsors, that really is everyone who encompasses our industry. So again, we thank you all for being here and again, taking this information and pouring back into your clients.
Yes, and I do want you to take copious notes because we're talking about hyperlocal market right now, and there's some big things that we are going to be addressing that are very important to you and your clients. Yes.
Yes, and Austin, you were absolutely right. We will be talking about days on market. We will be talking about inventory. So let's jump in. This is a really important slide. Again, this is something that you can use in your presentations. We're going to take a look at the market in comparison to when we had a peak buyer's market, when we had the peak of the seller seller's market and then the market that we're currently in right now. So if you take a look up at the screens, what you're going to notice specifically is we touch on our active listings. Y'all, there is more supply. Right? In the last quarter of 2024, we are seeing a little under 9,000 homes that were available. So supply has gone up. There's a little bit more, and for some of you, hyper locally, you might go, no, Cara, I didn't feel that. It was really competitive. But on the whole, we've seen supply up and hold steady. Not so much on distressed sales, y'all. They're still not happening. It's still not a thing. It is something worth watching, however. But we are seeing a slightly less active market. But the big thing that you're going to notice, right, because price has held steady, I want you to take a look at that median days on market. And when we looked at peak buyer's market, right, we were looking at roughly 145 days. And as we moved into a peak seller's market, which was May of 2021, we were down to 8 days. And for the market that we ended in last year, we're actually looking now at 46 days. And we're going to go through some data with you that shows how that number has grown, because the last time we came together, that was a much lower number.
It was, for sure.
It really, really was. The other thing that we're going to be speaking a lot about today is the percentage of price reductions. And for some of you, you're going, oh man, I know it, I lived it. And pay close attention, because pricing now more than ever, it's still going to be really important, but there's a little bit more to it today that we're going to discuss. So let's keep going. Now, this slide actually compares for all of 2024. So when we came together, we looked at March, June, September, and December. Okay, take a look at those active listings. Right, we saw a little bit of fluctuation. You see things happen seasonally, but your biggest takeaway here is your days on market, your price reductions, and your failed listings. So again, we're looking at days on market. We've gone from 26 days to 46 days just in the course of the year. When we look at price reductions, we're now looking at 52%. 52% of properties listed took a price reduction. So if you took 10 listings and you had to price reduce half of them, right? For some of you, that's been your reality. Again, now's the opportunity for us to start talking about setting expectations better. The other thing we've seen go up is our failed listings, which is up 10% from the end of the first quarter of last year.
And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today is standards and setting those expectations. So let's go into the listings. And as you can see here, that we are still with less than 6 months of supply. So we're still sitting in that seller's market. And when you look at the green line there, that's the balance market. The blue is the interest rate, and the months of supply is in the black. So we're trending in the right direction there. And then when we look at the first 30 days, 43.1% of all sales occurred within the first 30 days. Now, this data is critical. This is really everything to setting the expectations with your clients. After 8 days, the original list price becomes more volatile.
I'm sorry, after how many days?
8 days.
That's it, y'all. 8 days.
So only 11.4 were reduced in the first 30 days versus 77.6 requiring price reductions after 30 days. So after 30 days, you're at 77, almost 80%. You're going to be doing a price reduction, and that you're going to see is going to put you in a very challenging situation when it comes to original list price. Okay?
So let's keep looking at the incidence of price reductions. So we're seeing that 49% of homes had price reductions, which is up 8.6%. Again, we've been talking about price for a year, right? And this is it's more prevalent than ever. The other thing that you'll note is every one of these slides, even where we feel like maybe there's some, not bad news, right? Although I joke that I get to deliver all the bad news today, is every one of these is an opportunity, right? To grow your skill set, grow your education, set expectations better. And again, the price reduction conversation is simply an expectation setting conversation. Okay, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here, because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to reduce the price, but the question is, what percentage are we seeing and how much does that actually mean? So when we take a look here, this is the percentage taken by price range. Now, we like to look somewhat more in the middle, so there's this price range here right in the middle from $300 to $499, but then we also look from $500 to $749. And something that we've noticed is a trend where under $500 seems to flow one way, and above $500 flows the the other way. But it's interesting because we're actually seeing this across the board, right? There's a little bit of a drop in that category from 500 to 749, which is just, again, you've got people who are potentially less affected by interest rates or less concerned about the challenges of the market, and they might be more incentivized to sell. But again, price reduction is a big conversation. On the next slide, we're going to look at the actual dollars of it. So bear with me because I got to keep my numbers with me. Let's see if there's one more before it. Okay, so I'm going to give you the numbers. It's not in front of you, but I want you to actually write this down. Let's just say you're selling a home and it's roughly $499,000. Okay, you with me? We're selling a home, it's $499,000. Do me a favor, don't cash that check in your mind just yet. Because the reality is that if it's not priced correctly and we know it's overpriced, that price is coming down. The question is how much? But based on what the data tells us, it's actually going to be a price reduction of approximately $28,000. Was I right in telling you not to cash the check just yet?
And not even including concessions.
Not including concessions, seller paid closing costs, negotiations, anything. So understand that even midway, about $500,000, you're talking about a massive drop. And again, we're gonna look, if we have a luxury client, those numbers do go up, but every single price point is affected by price reductions. And that was one of our biggest takeaways when we looked at this data. Let's keep going on, Dan. So the price reduction effect, okay, it's really simple. When you have to reduce the price on your property, it takes longer to sell. That is the price reduction effect. So again, what we just want you to see is that the overall median is 86 days. It is going to take you, 86 days to sell a property if you have to reduce the price. Hi, who wants to price it the first time? Price it right, yeah? Are we with me?
Yes.
Exactly. All right, so let's keep going because I don't know about you, but I don't want to be on the market for 2.5 months. I don't want to have the same conversation for 2.5 months.
Right, and we talked about this last time, and it's obviously we've seen an increase from just this last quarter, year over year where we've been. This is huge because the overall median of 40.9%, which is up 4.7 points higher than where we were year over year, but it increases in 7 out of the 8 price categories there. So essentially, all the failed listings that we're seeing, we're at 40% failed listings. Now just think about that for a second, because what does that actually mean? When you are having the conversation with your clients, are you setting that up at the very front end and setting those expectations, explaining what does a failed listing look like? What does that mean from a financial standpoint? What does that look like with days on market? And we want to challenge you to know what your standard is. If you're not saying what your standard is in that conversation with your client, working with me, my standard around pricing is, and then you need to have a clear answer to that so that you're giving them that direction, because you're the leader. You're guiding and giving them the direction. And I think they're the ones going to look at you when they're 86 days on market, right, and really have a problem with now not getting full list price and having to sit with those carrying costs.
The other thing, before we go into this one, show of hands, how many of you set goals for 2025? You took a business planning course, this is what I love about Keller Williams, Andia, this is amazing. You sat down and you created your goals. The question for you, for those of you who are planning taking listings, which should be everyone, right, was did you factor in a 40% no sale rate? So if you knew you wanted to sell 20 homes, great, I hope the goal wasn't 20. Because now we've got fallout, but now we actually have this failure rate to think about. So every time you decide to overprice your listing, I want you to go back to the goal and say, is this really my goal? Or am I going to go back to the standard of, I take a listing and I sell it?
And we didn't want to land with just ending there, and we wanted to give you something that you could walk away with. And Gary Keller from the Shift book, where we talk about seller pricing strategies in Tactic 7, gives us a very, very important quote. It says, correct pricing represents 80% of your marketing efforts.
Wait a minute, Andia. So it's not my tickety talks, it's not my Instagram videos, it's not my pretty flyers?
Those things matter when this part's done. 80%. So do you put that much effort into this conversation? Is 80% of your conversation and your strategy and what you're bringing to the table with the numbers and how you're communicating, is that 80%? Think about it. Because it's not for the average, right? Because the numbers tell us otherwise, and how many know the numbers tell the story? But y'all aren't average in this room, right? So I know you're having these conversations.
I love that. We get to have this conversation. We get to consult with our top agents here, and this continues to come up. So we'll say it again, right? Ready, Andia? Hi, say it with us. Price it right the first time. Love that.
We're getting good at this.
Yeah, we really are. I think it's fun. I think it's landing. Yeah, I think so. All right, so again, we're going to talk about overcoming some seller objections. And in the current market that we're in, it's about leading the conversation, having the education to back it up, and then setting clear expectations with your clients. Again, this is your opportunity to be the trusted guide and the expert so that your clients work with you with confidence. They trust you with the greatest wealth building opportunities that they have, and they refer you more business. Okay, so you had a chance to sit down with Jackson. What did he have to say?
I did. So setting expectations with clients when they want to overprice their house, which is happening a lot. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we are going to list at whichever price you choose. There's a 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day price, as we've discussed. How quickly do you want to sell? Anything over the 30-day price, we are writing into the listing agreement a price reduction schedule to reduce every 7 days with no offer received. This is a plan. This is a standard. Does that make sense? This is the standard of how you're setting that conversation. If you don't do that, there's no guardrails. There's no boundary to what's going to happen.
I love that. And then we had the opportunity to consult with Angie Poncel, another top producer, and her conversation with the client is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're going to list it at X price based on the comparable sales. I love that she uses the data. We think this is the right price. And please understand, real estate is not an exact science, and sometimes the market changes. So let's agree to revisit the price if we've not had an offer in the first 14 days. And she also said, you know what, get hyper-local. It might be 7 days, 10 days, 12 days, get specific. And if we don't have that offer, right, we're gonna look back at it. Does that sound fair? So again, it's not always, okay, here's my script and I have to read it verbatim. It's simply having a conversation with your clients so they feel like you're also on their side and presenting them with data.
And it takes confidence. I love the confidence of we are going to list, like just leading them through that process. And then James Farron, this is incredible, again, setting those expectations when they want to overprice. This is a set the table conversation because if we don't set it up right, we become adversaries. Mr. and Mr. Seller, before we agree on a price together, let's understand the market forces that are at work here. At the end of the day, I don't pick the price, and unfortunately, you don't pick the price either. Can we both reasonably agree that the market determines the price? Since we are both rational people, let's analyze the numbers together and agree on a price that will be absorbed by the market, not just the number we want. Love it.
I love that. And one of the things that's really great about that too is that he's coming from a place of logic,
yes,
which helps our clients also get back in a place of logic. So that's very well done. And then I had a chance to sit down with Emmett because sometimes, and we can just say it, we haven't set the expectations properly. We haven't set the table properly, and we need to go back and have that conversation. And so Emmett says, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I wanted to talk with you as we're getting some pretty loud feedback from the existing market. Break script. Fun fact, y'all, sometimes that's total silence, right? Unfortunately, the market is not supporting our current asking price, and it may be time to adjust or reposition to a more buyer market friendly position that will cause the home to sell in this market. What are your thoughts? So again, we're asking questions, we're doing less telling, and we're inviting them to self-discover with us that this price, it's not it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about sales. All right, so when we look at our monthly sales, we can see from fourth quarter 2024 sales are higher in each month of the quarter versus last year. So we have seen that increase in sales. So when you look at the red line there for 2024, we even saw an uptick in December. So on the right track, yes. And then sales with sales price to original list price, realistic pricing produces the best results, 27.5% overall sold at or above original list price. So we're actually down
9.5 here, as you can see, and look at all those pricing categories, okay? So 27.5% is not a massive number that sold at original list price. So we're down there.
What this slide shows you is in comparison in the last year where we're at for total numbers sold by price range. So where this tool is going to come in handy is when you do have a specific targeted price point and you want to speak to your clients about what the market has looked like. So you'll note up on the screen that there's just a total percent change of 12.6%. So that has gone up. It's a difference of about 1,000 sales between the last quarter of 2023 versus 2024's last quarter. We'll go to the next slide. Again, whenever we see green, yay, green is growth.
Green, good.
We love it, right? What's interesting is we're seeing that growth in all price points. So what this tells us is that when we look at resale, so not new construction, so this is detached resale properties, and we compare them from the fourth quarter of 2023 to the fourth quarter of 2024, we're seeing that growth. Where we've seen it be more explosive, however, is going to be in that set like 500 up to $1.5 million range. What that also tells us is that consumers shopping in that price point have more confidence in listing their properties and also figuring out where they're going to go. So what was interesting is when we got together last quarter, we said, well, what about the elections and what about interest rates? What's interesting is that the data shows us that that wasn't a concern for consumers in these price points, really in any price point. And I think it was Jimmy Barron who gave us a conversation that he has with his clients, is that truly when we look at things like elections and whatnot, they don't actually affect that consumer confidence. And I gotta give it to Jimmy because he's right. Here it is. So again, regardless of what we're feeling is outside contributing factors, the numbers tell us everything, which is that every single day people need and desire to buy and sell homes, and it's our opportunity to be the person that helps them do that. What else we got?
So, and how many of us are feeling now that we're towards the end of January that things are picking up? Do you feel that? Are you getting the listings? Are those conversations happening? I see the hands, okay? So things are picking up, and our median days on market are also increasing. So that's something to note as you're gaining traction and the sales, we're seeing a projection in sales increase, 40 days overall up, which is 60%. So we're looking at, increasing in all price ranges there, going from 25 to 40 days on market. That's a big deal. That's for sure another set expectation conversation.
Well, let's get into some opportunity conversations, right? Because sometimes we see seller paid closing costs and go, oh, my sellers are going to have to pay this money. All of this is an opportunity to set expectations with the sellers, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. In addition to pricing it correctly, it's important that we note that we can expect that homeowners or people who are looking to purchase in X price point have received X amount of closing costs, right? So this is an opportunity to level with your buyers. This is also an opportunity to set expectations with your sellers, so there's no fun surprises down the road. Again, if we take a look at the data and we just a data set point of that 500 to 749,000, we're seeing that people are getting on average $8,000 in closing costs. Okay. Now, some of you might be saying, you know what, that's really not a part of my conversation. I don't know how important this is to the conversation. I'm going to tell you right now, when we looked at the last quarter, 64% of sales did have closing costs. Do we think we need to have this conversation if we're not having it already? Absolutely, yes. Again, this is just a little bit more information. So take this and say, here's my price point. Here's part of the conversation that I have. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're looking to sell your home, and it's roughly $1 million. We can expect that between now and the time of close, on average, we will see about $8,500 in seller closing costs. It doesn't mean that we will give this. However, we can reasonably expect that this might come up. Okay? Let's keep going.
Good news for us, and we talked about this a little bit on the national level, right? So here hyper-locally, our average annual median sales price is $458. Now, in different hyper-local areas, that's going to be different. We're seeing it across the board. But look at the trajectory there, 4.2% higher than 2023. But look at this huge number. We're 238% higher from where we were at the lowest in 2011. So we've just continued to see that increase which is really awesome for our clients with equity, with just holding their position, but also for us. We're in a great market here in Atlanta, so that's great for us. And then this is I would love to see a show of hands, because with our company specifically, this is a proprietary tool, these stats that only we offer. I would love to know who actually uses this in your conversation with your clients. Do you guys bring the real story? And the reason I ask is really because it does the work for you. This is literally the story and the conversation you're having. It's completely logical, unemotional, and the data doesn't lie. So you're just asking them which path they want to go down. Because when we look at the total closed, 9,183, of that, 96.4% got their original list price, 40 days on market. Now, if we follow the right path and we have no price reductions, then we're 100% of our list price, 13 days on market, and not previously listed, you could do 12 days on market, okay? So that's the path that we want to take people down. But when we start looking at that other side and we say, Mr. Seller, if we have to do that price reduction at that 15-day or 30-day mark, we're now looking at 86 days on market. Now let's talk about that scenario. Paint them a case study. What does that actually look like for them? Make them feel that pain point, right? And then if it was previously listed 132 days, but not previously listed 49 days, getting that 94% of original list price. So another conversation here, guys, is expireds. How many of us work expireds? Okay, a few of us do. So that's another thing to note, is you need to set the expectation that if it's been previously listed, you're going to see an increase. So for every 100 finalized listings, 59 sold, and of that 59, only 30 had no price reductions. So that's a small number. And when we look at the other side, 41% or 41 failed because of overpricing most likely, but 70 of every 100 listings were overpriced. So if you had 10 listings, did anyone take 10 listings? If you had 10 listings, 7 of those were overpriced. Now, what does that feel like for you? Is that comfortable? Do you like those conversations? It's extra work, it's extra time, it's extra money, right? All of those things. So this is really the conversation.
Absolutely. Now, again, when you go and have this conversation, we want you to be set up on how to have it. And so when we talk about pricing strategy, there are 3 ways that we can break down pricing, right? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we can decide to price our property above the market. However, very likely the data shows us that we will be on market potentially up to between 40 and 80 days, right? We get hyper-local. The other option, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that we're going to price it slightly below the market in the hopes that we get multiple offers. Or, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we can decide to price this property right at market value in the hopes that we get one really great offer, right? What we're getting to is a conversation of what's most important to them is time or money. Now, when your clients get stuck, this is a slide that's great. When we came together last quarter, the median days on market was 11 days. It's now 13 days. And this conversation and this slide does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So what the pink area shows you is that these are homes that don't sell. They are out of market, right? That's 41%. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we decide to overprice this home, you will more than likely end up out of market and part of the 41%. We don't want that, do we? Well, of course they're going to say no. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens when we price it here in this light blue section, which is 29% of homes. These are homes that chased the market. And when we say that, they chased the market down with their price reductions, right? And so they are on the market longer. Or, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we can decide to price it right today. We're going to live in this blue section, which is where 30% of homes are. And those are the homes that get sold with median days of 13 days on market. I would love to be able to sit with you at this table 2 weeks from now, so excited for the closing that we're going to have, and help you get to where you're going to go. So how about we decide to price it right the first time? Right? Again, going into the conversation with a pricing strategy is going to be one of the most important things that you can do. And this slide does a lot of the heavy lifting.
And add a standard to your strategy. What are your standards?
Well, speaking of which,
set standards with yourself
and set expectations with your clients. if you don't have standards, what are the likelihood that we are able to accurately set expectations with our clients?
It starts with us as the leader. All right, let's talk about overcoming buyer objections.
So what's interesting is a lot of buzz that's been coming out as we get into the new year. Something we hear from a lot of top producers is, I want to wait and see what the market's going to do. Has anybody heard that? Show of hands, safe space. Yeah, well, I see more hands. And we had a conversation with Jill Wright, and this is a conversation she's having today with her clients, which is, help me understand what specifically about waiting is important to you. And then they'll say what it is. She says, great. Well, what I'm hearing you say is that this, whatever that is the most important thing. If I could help you achieve that thing in the current market, would you be open to learning more? And now we simply take them from a place where they're in a block to saying, oh, maybe I can have what I want. Maybe it's got nothing to do with the market. Okay? And then we also heard from Cindy Young, phenomenal producer. Unfortunately, she's under the weather. She couldn't be here today. But when a buyer says they want to wait and see what the market is doing, this is what Cindy says. She says, I completely understand wanting to time the market just right. However, real estate is unpredictable, and waiting could mean missing out on great opportunities. Keep in mind that while you wait, home prices and interest rates could change, potentially making homes less affordable in the future. The best strategy is to focus on your needs and long-term goals rather than trying to time the market perfectly. Let's take a look at what's available now, and I can help you make an informed decision. How many of our clients feel like they can time the market? Right? So again, take this as a conversation to say, hey, I can appreciate that you want to time the market just right. Hey, I've been there myself, and here's why that might not work.
All right, let's go into
Supply.
supply.
Okay, let's jump in.
Yeah, so looking at this chart, we're up 20% versus where we were in the fourth quarter of 2023. So if you see that, we've got 2.9 months overall. So we're really increased in 5 out of those 8 price ranges with supply. So that's great news for us. If we can shorten those days on market, we're going to be churning and burning this year, aren't we? And then in this category, you know, when we look at the red, which is worse, we're just basically seeing that we've seen that major increase in days on market in most of all categories.
All right, now here's an opportunity in the presentation. We're not going to go through every single area. However, this map shows you specifically what is happening in every area. So depending on where you're going on your appointments, you can take this back and identify what might be happening in your potential client's area. So let's go through really quickly. Okay, this slide simply shows you numbers sold. So when we look at the top 5, this is where we're seeing the most number of sales in the last quarter of last year, and then the least number. It's interesting because we've seen a lot of growth in Gwinnett. So number 1 is Northeast Gwinnett, then we have East Gwinnett, Central Gwinnett, East DeKalb, and West Cobb Smyrna. And where we saw a drop in sales is going to be in Vinings, Sandy Springs ITP, Midtown, Dunwoody, and Sandy Springs OTP. And you're going to see that Sandy Springs it's definitely slowed down in that last quarter, which is surprising. We really haven't seen that in the last almost 2.5 years. So again, I have to give a shout out to our incredible social team and our creative director, Stephen Wright, who put all of these slides together for you. Let's please give it up for Stephen. Now we know that pricing is 80% of the battle, but in the remainder of that battle, take these social shares, put them in text messages, put them in your newsletters, your clients, social, send that out, because again, this is the information that clients are wanting to hear. And then as we move on,
the other key to this, y'all, is this gives you the opportunity in any conversation you're having, right before you go meet with them, you're pulling this data. Like, you're looking at these hyperlocal areas to see what the real stats are. Metro and the area median, fourth quarter, was 448. So you're going to be able to see here our top 5, Sandy Springs, Buckhead, Midtown, Vinings, Sandy Springs OTP, and then the bottom 5. So this gives you the real numbers in each category. And then once again, the percent in median sales price change, up 1.8%. But when you break it down into all the little areas listed, you've got your top 5, which Vinings is still at the top, Sandy Springs, ITP, Southeast Cherokee, West Atlanta, West Forsyth, and then the bottom 5, Southeast DeKalb, Southwest Atlanta, Southwest DeKalb, South Fulton, and Tucker. And then we have another one of these. These are huge. I mean, being able to take this and post this on your social media, send it out in a newsletter, like this data your people care about, okay?
Again, we come to percent change in numbers sold. What I'm going to draw your eye to is that red box right in the middle, and that's actually Sandy Springs ITP in Area 26. We're very much used to seeing people are making that migration out from Buckhead, from Sandy Springs, out into Johns Creek, Milton, Alpharetta, but it's a pretty stark contrast to see in the last quarter. And as we go on, again, here's where you're going to see that boom. So if your clients are not feeling confident, they're in one of these areas, here's a reason to feel confident. And if you've got a listing that's sitting, here's another opportunity to go back and say, hey, we're actually kind of on target with the market. This is what we can expect. And are we priced correctly? This sounds really interesting. So we talk about supply. We've actually seen, so if you look here, the blue actually shows that we have between 3 and 4 months of supply. I'm going to draw your attention to where the blue areas are. So 29 is actually West Midtown, and then we're going to be looking at Southwest Atlanta and Atlanta. Those are the areas where we're seeing supply go up. Keep in mind that's also areas where we see the cost of land is a little bit lower, and developers have an opportunity there to actually develop new homes and bring new homes to the market. And so that could very well be a reason why we've seen supply go up in those 3 specific areas. And again, just your top 5, bottom 5 of where we're seeing supply the most. And again, it all kind of lines up as well with the homes that are selling the fastest.
In days on market here, you can see our top 5. We got a 3-way tie here for Decatur, Tucker, and Southwest Cherokee. Okay, these are the shortest days on market, so 17 leading, and really looking on this other side, 80 days. So still within the range that we looked at today. And then sale to original list price, top 5, Vinings, 98.8%. So Buckhead, all the way down to Midtown at 94%. So still in 95% range of sales to original list price.
Again, price reductions, I think it's landed, right? But again, if you're feeling pressure, if you're feeling like you've really got the right price, it does help to go back and see if the area that you're in is matching what the data showed coming into the new year. And then as we continue on, multiple listing periods. Again, if you are one of those people that said, hey, I work expires, or you're interested, we are seeing homes come on market several times, and this is a great opportunity for you to brush off that conversation and be the person that sells the listing, gives the client the best experience, and gets more referrals to come. And again, failed listings percentage, y'all, those are up. Okay, but at the same time, if you're someone that had a rough 2024 and you said, man, Cara and Dia, I was the person that had 10 listings and 7 of them were overpriced and more than half of them didn't sell, this is an opportunity, right? Where can we increase our skill set? What conversations do we need to be having, and where do we need to get that clarity within on our standards? So to recap, right, as we've said, number 1, set standards for yourself and have complete confidence in that. Again, when you go to that client, the opportunity to set expectations becomes that much easier.
And guys, we have this data. Imagine being, an agent in this market without knowing these numbers. You're walking into these conversations blindly. This is our proprietary market stats. This data, I nerd out on the data because it tells the story of what exactly is happening. So understand where your skill set gaps are. Is this something that you're doing? Do you have a standard? Do you have a, this is my standard on pricing statement? Do you bring tell the story? Are you in a position where you're at that 50% of your listings are actually needing price reductions? And make sure to know your numbers, okay? Because we don't want you just taking listings. What do we want you to do?
We want you to sell those listings.
We've got opportunity in 2025, huge opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. Up next, we're going to hear from our commercial division with the amazing Rocky Kaufman. Come on down, Rocky, let's give him some love.
Thank you. I should have known not to wear a dark suit. I look like Michael Cheever's chubby mini-me. So. And there it goes. So A couple things, not going to go long into office. It's the usual. We know it's going to be a struggle. It's probably still 2 or 3 years away from getting out of that struggle. You see that we've got negative absorption up there. Something to note in retail, look carefully. You're looking at 25.4K. Basically, that's nothing, right? That's not a meaningful number. So we're at equilibrium in terms of the new retail coming on market and the amount that's getting absorbed. So retail's actually looking good. Industrial is an interesting story here because we talked about the last couple of quarters. They had struggles. They were building millions of square feet of new industrial, and all of a sudden the Amazons of the world stopped their growth into that sector. So, and then multifamily, again, you're seeing some struggle there because we overdeveloped. So usually when I'm looking at these things, I'm maybe over-focused on the forecast and where we're going in the future, but I think this is a good time to take a little look back at what's happened. So you look at office here, and you look at 2020, obviously COVID happened, and you saw all of a sudden we started getting vacancy rates increasing rapidly. And you look at that, that's what you'd expect, right? And we look at that compared to retail, and you're seeing, you're seeing again, COVID striking, and what happened with retail. You had it drop like a rock in terms of vacancy, and we've got some retail being built, but not large amounts of it because people were still nervous about it, even though it seems to be doing well. And then meanwhile, COVID hitting in 2020 for Atlanta industrial. Now everybody thinks that we're never going to go shopping again, and they're building warehouses. So they start just building loads of it. So it was doing really, really well for a few years there, but then that overbuilding has taken effect, and that's where you're getting these vacancy rates that we have here. Now it is, again, we've got some positive news in industrial, but they did overbuild, but it is getting absorbed. So you're going to see it do okay moving forward here. Multifamily to me is obviously it's the one that relates best to residential and what all of you are doing. But we know what happened there. 2020 happened. The prices to build started skyrocketing. So now people can't afford homes. So multifamily started filling up. They're raising the rental rates. So like builders like to do, they build, right? So they way overbuilt, and we're feeling that now. In particular, ITP. Inside the city, you still have some projects coming online because they've been working on them for, in some cases, 5-6 years. So you're seeing the results of that, and we're probably still a few years out from dealing with the oversupply that we've had in industrial. Let's try that again. So under construction properties, this is one that just drives me crazy. As bad as we know Atlanta office is going, they're still building it. It is an interesting story though, because if you looked back at the earlier slide, you see that in spite of nearly 20% vacancy rates in office, the rental rates are actually still climbing. And that's one of those, how do you put your finger on how that happens? And we find that companies are still doing well. And the ones that need office space, they want nice office space. So there's lots of landlords out there that they don't have the money to put into it. So you're seeing new construction, and you're seeing some of these companies being willing to pay top rates to have great space, because that's what they want. Their employees, millennials coming in, they're being forced in the office. They expect the ping pong table over there in the corner, and so you're going to continue to see those prices rise. Little side note to everything: Atlanta has become the 6th largest metropolitan area. I like that, right? I had a little debate on this with Charlie Lockwood, by the way. He said that it probably will remain 6th for our lifetime. First of all, he's in his 80s and I'm 50, so what our lifetime is debatable. But Dallas and Houston are like Atlanta. They're growing very rapidly for similar reasons. They don't have as much regulation, so lots of businesses are flooding into those areas. You do see a place like Chicago, though. They're basically neutral. And it could take a long time, but at the rate that we're growing, 20, 30 years, it's not inconceivable that we're overtaking a city like Chicago. But I think that this is going to relate to what we're talking about here in a second, which is, as a side piece, you've got Centennial Yards. So this is a little surprising to me. Centennial Yards is, a 50-acre development going on next to right in downtown, and you've got urban revitalization going on. So it's got office and multifamily. Retail, I can totally understand, like we talked about, it's doing well, so that makes sense. But again, we're building more office space, we're building more multifamily. Well, if you look at this project, it has changed some over time. So one of the newest bits of news on this is they've taken a large portion of what was going to be multifamily, and they're actually going to put another hotel down there now. So with a lot of these revitalization efforts, you're going to see it change direction a little bit in terms of what are the needs right now. And obviously next to Mercedes-Benz, there's actually a need for additional hotels. So this story, data centers is a huge thing all around the country, but in particular in Georgia. And this is very much related to AI. If you look at the number of them, Georgia's getting more than its fair share of data centers. And you look at that a little bit from the residential world, well, how does that affect us? If you look at data centers, yeah, you're gonna bring in a lot of people to construct these, but they don't require that many people. It's not that much new labor that's coming in. But it's more a story of what's going on in Metro Atlanta and what's going on in Georgia. Why are we getting more than our fair share? And the reality is that, one, we're getting them in part because access to fiber optics, because we have so many rails here, fiber optics are very often running with the rail systems. And you've got tax incentives, you've got a good regulatory environment where we are aggressively trying to bring business to Georgia. Land is more reasonably priced. I mean, imagine trying to put up data centers in New York. I mean, it's just nearly impossible to afford that. And the other piece of it is power is relatively inexpensive. So AI takes massive amounts of power. So they're needing to set these things up where they don't have regulations in their way, where they can get the land fairly cheap and they can get power to them. And back to the regulation piece, Georgia is doing a lot right now to increase its power supply. So what does this really mean for all of us? Because again, we're not going to see residents, new homes being built en masse around these things. But what you are seeing is you're seeing money flooding into our state, into our region. And that's going to continue to happen. And because we are cheaper, I think we're moving towards equilibrium. Are we ever going to be as expensive as New York? Well, probably not. But the reality is we're still looked at as a low-cost provider of space, of land, and all of these things. So we're going to keep moving in the right direction. So if you're investing in commercial real estate like I am, or you're buying a home, I feel pretty good about my house. I feel pretty good about investing in real estate because Georgia, Metro Atlanta in particular, has all kinds of good things happening to continue price growth. That's what we all want to see. So in this package, by the way, you can click on these links and they'll take you to these reports. And I realize a lot of you, it's like, how does this affect me? Well, I love sitting here and listening to all of you about what's going on in the residential world because all of us should try to be an expert in real estate. I don't pretend to be a residential expert, but I do get asked by my clients all the time about what I'm seeing in terms of certain trends. And I've got people I can reach out to on the residential side if I can't answer a question. You should do the same. And if you're out there talking to your clients, you knowing a little bit about what's going on in the commercial world just makes you seem like a more of an all-around expert in real estate. So hopefully they look at you as someone beyond just someone who can go find a house on FMLS, but a true expert for them to rely on. So we're going to now have new homes with, is it Debbie Leonard? Debbie Leonard.
Okay, so let's get started. This is the new homes sold annually. So this slide tracks the annual sales of new homes from 1965, and I'm having to kind of read it because I can't see the screen, to 2024. The peak was in 2005 with 127 million homes sold right before the housing crash. So sales fell sharply to 306,000 in 2011 during the Great Recession, but been recovering ever since. So in 2024, 682,000 new homes were sold. So the market has rebounded from the pandemic lows. And of course, you can see that it's still stabilizing. While the new homes sales have not reached the 2005 peak, they are still showing a steady demand. So this is the new homes sold monthly. And on this slide, it breaks down new homes from January 2023 to December 2024. And if you look at the chart, the highest month was in April 2024, was 736,000 homes sold, showing a peak and demand. The lowest month was November 2023, was 609 homes sold, indicating a seasonal slowdown. December 2024, of course, it ended up strong at 698,000 homes. So for the takeaway of this slide, the new home sales have been stable month over month, with demand increasing in late in 2024. The builders from, back in 2023 till now, they're really cautious about what they're buying. They've kind of pivoted and they've kind of changed to, what they're purchasing. Long ago, I used to find lots in the back of the neighborhoods, and it was all about the price. And now they're really focusing around more of a location. They're focusing around the small towns. I'm sure if or if you're around downtown Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton, Brookhaven, they're really focusing on close to the convenience of shopping and restaurants. And I know you guys have seen Swanee and on up 85, so Norcross. So that's what they're really doing. They're really they're paying more attention about the location. Next slide is the new home starts monthly. This slide shows new homes from 1961 to 2024. The highest home starts were in 2005, 172 million homes before the housing bubble burst. The market hit a low of 434,000 in 2011, but has steadily increased. So back in the recession, I was one of the agents in the recession, and that was probably my highest focal point in my entire career. I had a sign call and met one of the biggest developers in the Southeast region. And while everybody else was losing everything that they had and prices were really bad, I was selected to go out, and I was one of the pioneers in Brookhaven and Sandy Springs buying lots back in those days, and really pioneering into what Sandy Springs and Brookhaven is today. The new home starts monthly again. This slide provides a monthly breakdown of the new homes in thousands from 2023 and projected data for 2024. And here are some of the key highlights. In 2023, they started off slow with 834,000, then raised to almost 1 million in July, and then in November peaked at 1,126. The trends in 2024 was consistent through April, then it dipped in May, then rises again in August. So minimal fluctuations throughout the rest of the year. The builders last year around May, June, and the developers, they all kind of stopped buying. Debbie, we're not buying anymore. We want to see how the economy's doing. In all the new construction properties that I had, I could see all of a sudden the slowdown. So what we were usually building cost by square foot, if it was 480 a foot, then it was slowly decreasing. And I had longer days on market. And that's because of the economy, them being very nervous and scared, and of course the rates. Next slide is the new residential construction long-term. So there are 3 points, key points. It's the peak, the drop, and the recovery. and the peak was in September 2005. The construction activity reached a high point with 1.8 million permits, 1.6 completions, and almost 1.8 million starts. And then in January 2009, it dropped. The housing market crash led to a sharp decline, with activity dropping as low as 337,000 permits, 566,000 completion, and 358 starts. And January 2020 is when the recovery started. And this was significant recovery with values nearing 1 million in all categories. So this is when, the builders now, it's really changed, because what they're buying now, they're paying more money for the land, and of course, therefore, it's pushing that price point up. Next slide. The new construction short term. So this is just an overview of the short-term fluctuations from January 2022 to December 2024. In January 2022, the new construction activity began with permits at 1.25 million, completions of 947,000, and starts at 1.19 million. Then a decline in November of 2022, the permits dropped significantly, reflecting tightening marketing conditions. And then in 2023, the activity recovered, and with permits nearing 1 million by that time. Next slide. So this just shows in December 2024, the building permits were 996,000, housing completions was 948, and of course the housing starts was 1,050. This slide is the new versus the resale medium sales price trends. So on the gray line is for the new homes, and on the red line is for the resale homes. From the first quarter of 2019 to the fourth quarter of 2024, it gives us a clear picture of how the markets have evolved over time. Currently, there is a gap about 85,000 between the two. The average on new is 520,000. That's up by 2.1 versus the fourth quarter of 2023. And then for the resale, the average is 435,000, and that's up by 1.6 versus the fourth quarter in 2023. And of course, this data reflects the changing market conditions, the inflation, the demand for new construction, and of course, the interest rates. This is the fourth quarter sales on the new homes. This is a breakdown of the new homes in the fourth quarter in 2024 across the different price ranges. And there are 1,011 new homes sold in the fourth quarter of 2024, representing a modest increase of 1.9% compared to the fourth quarter in 2023. And so you could just, this chart is divided up into 7 price ranges, providing the number of homes sold year over year percent changes. And the one that I key in on the most is the starting off with $500,000. I don't know where we're going to go and find a house that's $100,000, $200,000. I mean, I don't know of anything around that is that low in price. Now, I was out in Douglasville yesterday, and I saw a sign that said $300,000 and up. So, from the 500 to the 749,000 range, that's a 2.5% increase. Mid-tier homes continue to perform well as buyers move into a higher price point. And then from the 750 under the million mark is an increase of 36.5%. And of course, anything under the million mark, we all know that's a sweet spot. In the luxury market, of course, things have, because of the economy, things hadn't looked so good. This time, in This past year in 2024, I think I struggled the most, and the price points of $2 million to $3 million. Things were sitting, and if the builders weren't building the right product, it was taking anywhere between 5 to 8 months to sell. So they all like I said, they all kind of stopped buying towards the end of last year. They were just waiting to see how the economy had changed. Next slide is the fourth quarter months of supply, the new homes. So overall, the supply is 4.8 months, up by 6.7% compared to the fourth quarter in 2023. This indicates a slightly slower pace of sales across the market, approaching a balanced market around 6 months of supply. And of course, this is also a breakdown showing how many months each of the categories have. The $500,000 to the $749,000 is 4.5 months, and then from $750,000 to the $1 million mark is 6.2, and then $1 million to 1.49 is 6.8, and then 1.5 and over, you've got about 12.2 months of supply in the luxury market. So, last year with all the prices being the way they were, and if you were going to buy a luxury home, that's when you should have bought it. Because now things are a little different, and I'm really in the market. I'm not in the office. I'm usually in the road, and I'm in my houses, and I'm always looking for land and whatnot to carry these builders through. But I will have to tell you, the market for this year, it's strong. It's really strong. And I'm very excited about it. It's through the last several years. It's more stronger now than it's ever been. So we're just seeing a lot of activity. And here in the last couple of weeks, I have put most all of my $1 million luxury properties under contract, so that's a great thing. So now we're going to keep the prices are still going to be high, and the builders are going to be very selective about what they're going to buy and continue to buy. We'll see that throughout this next year. I want to introduce our luxury. I want to introduce Michael Bunch and Courtney Garner. Thank you so much.
Almost done.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite human beings, by the way, Michael Bunch. If you don't know him, please get to know him.
Oh, you're one of my favorite people.
High bar, high bar. All right, let's get into it. Who's excited about luxury today? Oh, felt sad. Felt sad. That's okay, let's do it again. Who's excited about luxury today? Yeah! All right, so what was interesting, one of the early songs he played was like, the underdogs on top was one of the lines in a theme song there. That's not true. There's no way these underdogs are catching up to our market share in luxury. You should be very proud of that. Give it up. You have 19.1% of market share. Compared to the beginning of 2024, you're up 2 percentage points. Right? That's a lot. This is going to be 25% soon. I've decided, I've guaranteed it. And because that's our global average. We dominate 25% of the luxury global market, which is insane. All right. And also just don't walk into a room if you know you're up against any of these other people. You're number one by more than 100%. And I want you to walk in with that confidence.
We've come a long way in my 22 years.
Yeah,
From Keller Who to we are comfortable on any stage at any price point.
But sometimes they'll say, oh, well, that's $700,000 up. We sell more $1 million properties than anyone else. What do you think, Michael?
We do that too.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, they're not winning there. $2 billion feels pretty good last year. $2 billion. Wow. All right, so, Michael.
One of the cool things about this chart for me is, and I'm going to say it's a chart of abundance. Look at the total number of sales in luxury. in a year where supposedly 71% of real estate agents licensed in the country sold no homes. This is a ton of luxury sales, and they are all over $1 million. So we've got a number of brokers in Atlanta doing a lot of business. There is plenty of business out there to be done still, and it got done last year. Keller Williams agents were a big part of that. So I guess since we're all working with each other across all companies, this is a big stage, and we've got a big part of that stage. So anyway, that's what this tells me. You can continue, and I hate to use the word gerrymandering, but maybe it's manipulating the numbers down to a small enough place where you can prove that you are the best. What we've done is just zoom out to the entire picture and go, on this stage, at this price point and above, who is playing there and who is getting business done. And that's the market and the numbers that I want to study. So I love the fact that the numbers show that we're doing a significant amount of business because we didn't try to do anything other than get to the truth. So anyway, that's the point that I wanted to make.
Speaking of truth, this has come up in a lot of my sessions this week. It's been pointed out that maybe some people in 2 through 10 say, oh, well, Keller Williams is only comparing to one of our offices, which is kind of funny because that's what they do, but that's okay. We're not doing that. I actually go through and I read the entire list of 1,500 reporting real estate organizations in the Atlanta metro area, and I ensure that all of their numbers under each of their company names are combined. So we are above board on that, and don't let anybody make you feel like you're less than $1 million baby, because you are.
So there is one third-party company, Trend Graphics, that will aggregate the numbers and let all of the brokers have access to the data versus getting it directly from MLS or FMLS. So that's not how it happens. So these are Trend Graphics numbers from a third party, and we're happy to go back and pull the raw data behind it if anybody has any questions about how this simple chart is aggregating those numbers. The numbers are an open book, so it's not a problem to give you that.
Perfect. Let's keep moving. Woo, good news in luxury. Everything's up.
What a pretty slide.
Yeah.
And the number, what is it? Andia said green is good. Green is good.
Green is good. It is the color of money.
And those are not small numbers either. So of course, the most affordable close-in new construction, which is 5 to $1 million, is probably, I think Debbie said, was the sweet spot. It's also the very competitive spot. So when you're setting expectations, you're not, if it's good new construction in a great area, you're probably still going to have to compete for it. And so setting that buyer expectation is going to be a good thing.
And competition is good. But the great news is that you're on top everywhere. So you're only competing with yourself.
That means that when you come to events like this, you're hanging around people who are most likely doing business and very active in the market. And what you want is conversations that are elevated and fresh from the front lines about the business that is getting done today. So that's what I love. My mama was right. It doesn't matter who you hang out with.
We like hanging out with you.
All right, moving on. I think. There we go. Price reduction effect. Oh man. Once you get above $1 million, none of the other stuff that you've heard today really is going to be relevant because the data sets are smaller and the numbers and the differences are so much bigger. So when you look at this, of course, if you don't hit the market right and people are jumping on it, and luxury buyers are savvy. They can recognize value and they can discard you if you are irrelevant. So what happens is the same dynamic happens. It just, the penalties are harsher because the numbers are bigger.
I know earlier they were talking with the average price reduction was $25,000 or so dollars. So we know that the average for us is 11%. On $1 million is not $25,000. That penalty is what, 113,000?
Yeah, well, some of these numbers are way off.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to how complicated it is to price the properties, how strong the egos are in saying, this is what I'm going to list for, and you are either going to be my agent at this price or I'm going to go find somebody who will. That doesn't mean they're going to end up with a strong negotiator and the right agent. They may just find an agent who's willing to go along that ride with them. But the conversations are more rigorous, I would say.
I had the great pleasure of attending, I think it was KWYP script off session, and Angela, who's in here, had this amazing, amazing line that she gave. And she said something along the lines of paraphrasing, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. See her afterwards to get the exact thing. But are you sure you want to out-negotiate the pricing of the person who's negotiating for you? Right? Make sure that that client wants a strong negotiator. And if they're willing to fight you when you're going to be fighting them, do they really want to win that battle? When you're the expert in that territory? So, see her, it was much better when she did it. Butchered it. That's okay.
But if you win that conversation, you could lose your own battle. Because if they're not strong enough to stand up to you with what is really going on in the market and the risks of you overpricing your own property, they're not going to be strong enough to defend that territory with the buying public and their agents. That's just the reality.
And honestly, if they want to shoot themselves in the foot, let them. And then when they come limping back to you because you were right in the first place, then you help them heal.
So I recently pulled 300 and some odd, right at 300 listings, over 2 million inside 285. And what I found is half of them, the histories were wrong. The original list prices had gotten detached. Their jagged history of their journey when they did not sell right away was so protracted that FMLS could not keep up with it. So what it means is it gets really ugly really fast for luxury properties that don't hit the mark price-wise. And so you got to dig and you got to work hard to get the pricing. And you got to network with the agents who are doing the business, and you got to build relationships with the appraisers so that you can get that right, because the slide said 80% of the battle is getting the price right. If you're a one thing fan, what's the one thing I can do such by doing it? Everything else gets easier or unnecessary. Give my clients sharp pricing advice. And from there, because beautiful, dazzling marketing can get totally wasted.
Brought to you by Live Luxury.
If you've got a mispriced house. What?
I said beautiful marketing, brought to you by Live Luxury.
Yes,
a shameless plug on my part, sorry.
Unfortunately, a bad price will waste even beautiful Live Luxury marketing. And it's tragic, it shouldn't happen.
It is, but it's not just a pricing penalty, right? Which in some of the price points is pretty severe. It is also a days on market penalty. So it's money and time, the two things that are most precious to many people once you get past God.
So has anybody in the room been personally on the market with your personal residence recently? Okay, so you will know the thought that you cannot relax about tomorrow until about 10 o'clock at night for the fear that a showing request is going to float in at 9:30 at night wanting to come at 10 a.m. in the morning. Well, the distance between getting it right, time is not just time. Time is being on pins and needles with you and your kids and your social life and everything that you've got moving part-wise going on in your life. And if you're in the luxury price point, a lot of times there are extended moving parts in your life, travel, all of this kind of stuff. Well, it gets increasingly more irritated. It's like exponential when your time on market, and the silence can be deafening, and the threat of a showing tomorrow when you're out of town. It's no fun. It's no fun.
Yeah. Time is money, and money cannot buy time. So we want to make sure that we are shortening that as much as possible. And we're going to actually dive into a little bit later in the slides, more specific into the areas, but these are by the price points. And as you can see, it's almost 8 times longer if you have to have a price reduction. I mean, some people can have a baby in that amount of time, and all the things they thought they were doing the next house are wrong again. So let's make sure that we're talking about that in the right way.
One thing's for sure, lower comps can sell in that time period, which is undermining wherever you happen to be sitting on the market with your value proposition.
But let's talk about comps a little bit. So we were told that 7 out of 10 homes essentially failed. They either came off the market or had to have a price reduction. And price reduction is a moderate failure. It's not all the way, I'm sorry to break that to you, but it is a little bit. So 7 out of 10. So when you're pulling 10 comps for this thoroughbred racehorse of an estate you're about to list, 7 of those are donkeys, right? So let's make sure when you're talking to that seller who maybe has an inflated price, you talk to them about the 3 that they actually need to look for. And if at the end of that conversation, they still want to price $100,000 higher than the only 3 actual competition in the room, they're probably not the client for you. Because you're more likely to lose the listing by listing it overpriced than you are to sell it. And by that time, you've put in marketing dollars and time and expenses and that sorts of things. So make sure that you're going through that and you're using this metric when you're looking at the comps. Has it been previously listed? Did it have a price reduction? Has it been on the market more than 15 days? Those are the metrics that make it not a good comp for how you want to present the marketing of this property going forward.
And pull the full archive. Don't just pull the data on FMLS, because I had to hand correct half of the properties to tell the real story. Otherwise, if you just do the quick CMA and you've got things over $1 million, it's going to tell you a unrealistically rosy story about shorter days on market and tighter sale price to list price ratios. And you will end up trying to give good advice and misleading your client accidentally because you didn't dig deep enough. So it's going to take the work, and a lot of agents will not do that work because they won't know that they need to unless they were here today.
Well, and the thing at Live Luxury, we track not just price points, we track the specific areas. Your luxury clients expect you to be the expert in the area that they intend to live their life in. So we break it down at an additional level, so you get bonus items from that. And it is slightly different when you dial into just the top luxury markets in and around the metro area. And by the way, if you're breaking into luxury, this is probably the list you want to target. If you are on the entry level or pre-luxury, which we consider 500 to 749, entry level luxury is 750 to under $1 million. These are the areas you want to target when you're ready to break into that higher price point. If you're looking to build into that, you want to be looking at that 500 to just under $1 million range kind of thing. But you can see if you list it right the first price for the first time, for the most part, you're going to get 100% of that listing, of the original list price. If you do not, the penalties by area vary slightly, but it's for the most part in the 80s. You know, you go from 100 to a B or A+ winner. So let's make sure we're getting it right the first time.
Yeah, you take where I am, which is the worst performing area that we have, because the chess match is in play and the personalities are stubborn.
That's all right. In a shifting market, you know, Keller Williams always gains market share. Because you're trained. You know what to do. You have systems, you have models, you have the largest real estate network the world has ever seen. And those others sometimes lucked into luxury, they won't survive. Make sure you're up to those skill sets because market share is coming your way. Next slide. Next slide.
We're there.
Oh, I can't read because I'm 46 now and I need readers. It's fine. Okay. So interesting things that are happening in these days on market. You're still seeing, you know, 1 week market in Buckhead if you're priced right. 113-day market in Buckhead if you're not priced right. And because it's a median, that means 50% are below and 50% are above. Some of those Buckheads are 0 days on market. Multiple offers. Pricing has never been better. Why? Looking at those comps in these specific areas, the days on market, if you're in Buckhead and it's not under contract in 7 days, it's a donkey. For your buyers, that means let's look at things that are 7 days and older, because that might be a deal out there for them.
Yeah, so what I love about this is if you've got a client in the upper end and they go, well, yeah, but those stats don't apply to me, then it's like, okay, it's not going to take 8 days, it's going to take 14 days. It's still 2 weeks, and because we've taken that slice and zeroed in on the higher end sales, we do have numbers for what that world looks like. And 14 days is still, you know, not very long. So if you've got 2 or 3 weeks, and definitely in under 30 days, you're going to know whether you're on the mark and getting traction or whether you're about to have to start chasing the buyers. And what do sellers hate? Silence. being ignored, and just having to sit there and nobody come to their party. What do buyers hate? Buyers hate to compete. So the way to turn the tables on the buyers is to price it tighter in the higher end so that you've got the activity that makes the sellers happy and you've got the urgency on the buyer side. So.
And really all your stats today is about bringing the buyers to the home. It's you and your listing and your sellers recruiting buyers based on buyer behavior. It's not just your feeling about it, it's a fact. And you can work with this to help get them on page because it's in their best interest and it's in your best interest. So walk in with confidence. You're number one, baby. Don't let anybody else tell you differently.
Sell some big houses.
The biggest. The incomparable, the undeniable, the iconic Jean Rawls.
What's happening? What did they possibly forget to tell you? This has been such a statistically packed morning that gave you great examples of how some of our best agents are using these stats to educate their clients. I want nothing more for all of you to be able to understand the market that you practiced your craft in. And we have, for several years, created a digital book for you to use on a quarterly basis. And I think it's been hidden. I've had so many people say to me, tell me about this quarterly magazine that we produce. So if you all did not check your email yesterday, it went out in email form. You have this ability every month to just plug and play. You can send this digital book to all of your top clients in your database. If you would like to personalize it, you can reach out to Kyle Elizabeth Pointer, and she's with the marketing department. And there are many agents that are doing this on a consistent basis. Jill Heinrichs, one of our agents at Peachtree Road, Erica Whitney at First Atlanta. And what's wonderful about it is you don't have to do a thing but to load it on up and send it on out. So if you have not received that email or you don't know about it, I really think you're missing an easy opportunity to take these statistics and share them with your people. What I also liked about this morning, if you haven't seen on the tables in your chairs, you can download this presentation. And I think many times we come to stats, and when we aren't seasoned into comprehending and loving to read economic data and being one of those people who really get into the numbers, you can leave overwhelmed. And I'm going to encourage you this morning not to be overwhelmed. Take a breath. This is great information. If you want to use some of it and don't understand it, you have a team of people in your market center, starting from team leaders to your OP office. And I would encourage you to pick one specific area that you just want to get a little stronger in your knowledge base. Because what I picked up on this morning that I heard loud and clear is that there should be a standard of excellence that you carry your life and your business by. And I would like to feel that you all have the highest standard of excellence, because in my opinion, we have one shot at this game called life. There's no dress rehearsal. Why do it at any other level than the highest level possible? And in order to do that, we all have to commit to be students, and students of our industry, and students of this craft that we practice. Because the other point I picked up on that I heard the ladies talking about is that you need to set the expectations with your clients. And in order to do that, A, you need to be knowledgeable, and B, you need to carry yourself with great confidence and have that conversation with your client where the journey is pleasurable for both of you, because none of us want to be in this industry where it's daunting and you dread to make phone calls. I want us to get up packed with knowledge where we can help the citizens of Metro Atlanta make great decisions and have a really fun time doing it, and have them prosper in buying and selling, and have you prosper in your careers. So I want to thank you for being here this morning, and I think we just might thrive in 25. Thanks for being here.